Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Tonight, I wanted to talk about the Red Dawn fallacy. You know, I like to think that if we ever had a Red Dawn event where the United States was invaded, that we'd all kind of pull the same type of thing. Fact of the matter is, that's kind of fallacy because how we would actually conduct that type of operation would be more of like what they saw in Fallujah, in Najaf, in Iraq, in Kabul, Afghanistan. Why? Because you wouldn't want to separate yourself off from the populace. And I say this because it makes sense to bug out in a heck of a hurry in this type of environment if we were invaded, or if we were having to fight our own government, God forbid. That last one seems a lot more realistic nowadays than what I ever thought would be. I never thought I would see my government as more of an enemy than I do foreign governments. But it's looking like more and more they see me, just plain Jane me, as a opposition to the government or as the enemy. The woke mob I see more and more on social media. And while I know we're winning on a lot of fronts, on other fronts we're losing because you can't reason with people that are indoctrinated into a cult. And why do I call it the Red Dawn fallacy? Because we'd actually be fighting in our own towns. And this is probably what would protect us. Because if you isolated yourself with modern technology, like thermals, like night optics, you would be behind the ball trying to hide from these people so they could easily isolate you, find you, and neutralize you. Where if you mixed in with the populace, even though you'd want to protect the populace, at least I would, the idea would be is that you would pop up, hit hard, then disappear. Now, to that end, you start looking at what they did in Red Dawn. Now, the new one is total trash. The North Koreans, the reason why I say that is the North Koreans, without a lot of help, couldn't get here. The Russians and the Chinese still would take a lot to get here. But if we were ever invaded, that scenario is very realistic. They come up in the Red Dawn scenario, if you don't know. The Cubans and the Nicaraguans come up through the southern border because it wasn't secured. Sound familiar? Then they basically bisect the country in half, and then the Russian army lands, or the VDV, lands in the Rockies to help block stuff, and then they use selective nuke strikes. Now, this seems very unrealistic in a lot of ways, but as we've seen a lot of really weird stuff in the last 3 years, such as the COVID crap and all the other stuff that's been going on with, child drag shows that I never thought I would have to fight. I've never had a problem with drag because, adults do their thing. But when you start trying to have a sexualized burlesque type show for kids, that's where I draw a hard line. Let kids be kids. Leave them alone. There's no reason in dragging them into this stuff. But it seems that there's a lot of people that are very much into, dragging kids into this stuff. But back to the Red Dawn fallacy. First off, there has to be some training involved if you were ever to conduct an operation like what happened in Red Dawn. Anyone who thinks that you can go and just, there'll be plenty of ammunition after the fight because we'll be able to pick it up off the enemy. To some extent, you're correct, but you're going to need to have logistics in place to keep a sustained operation going. Now, why would you fight? Some of us wouldn't. Some of us will. This is my country, damn it. I'm not giving it up without a fight. That's how I've always thought about this stuff with the Red Dawn type scenario. With that said, am I the peak physical condition to be conducting an operation like this? No. But I'm unassuming enough that I think I could be very effective at this type of mission. And why? Because I would blend in with the populace. First thing I would look at for this type of operation would be to hit command and control assets. So command and control, if you don't know what that is, radio communications, telephone communications, telecommunications in general, any communications, any type of command centers, any type of logistics depot, those to me are legitimate targets. And those are the ones you'd want to hit, just like they do in the movie. However, you'd want to do it in such a fashion that you didn't expose your entire force unless you absolutely had to. You would want one-off attacks because it drives terror. And as much as people don't like terror, in this scenario, if you had to fight it, this is how you would win. Look at what happened in Afghanistan. Look at what happened in Vietnam. It wasn't that we couldn't destroy the enemy if we were on open ground and could see them, the United States military, that is. The fact is they blended in with the populace, and we started to lose the momentum of the American people, and we lost the momentum of the populace, the hearts and minds of the populace we were there to defend or to indoctrinate into a democratic world. I say that because we've done a lot of nation building nowadays, and I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. In fact, that's why I'm more keen nowadays to back everyone off and say, hey, you know, we've done a lot of damage as far as the United States. It's time to let the world take care of itself for a while and deal with our own stuff at home. But if we were going to have to fight something like this, if we were invaded, how would you do it? Do you have the food? You know, an army marches on its belly. Do you have the ammunition? Do you have the training to know what a command and control asset is? Do you know where your fiber lines are? Do you know where your power lines are in your community? These are legitimate targets in this type of scenario. Now, would you do this for no reason? In other words, would you conduct this type of operation against, say, the government now? Absolutely not. We are not that far into the war to win hearts and minds in the United States. We're still at that phase where we need to talk things out and need to try to vote our way out of it before we can't vote our way out of it. A lot of people will say we're already past that point. I'm of the volition, and so is New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. The whole reason why the union was started was to get people informed and get them out to understand what was going on in their communities, what these idiots in Congress and in the roundhouse are trying to pass on you. And that leads me to think that we're farther away from Red Dawn type stuff than I ever thought. Again, I never thought I would see the day that I would consider the United States government as a possible enemy. But it seems more and more apparent that if you are not on the cult's side and you can actually think for yourself, you're an enemy to them. And when I say them, I mean the cultist. You know, I've seen a couple posts lately from people I care about on social media who say that they'll never go to Tennessee again because they've banned child drag shows. And that drag is not the problem. Guns and people that hate drag are the problem. None of these people are actually addressing the elephant in the room. Again, it's the person. No one on my side cares about drag shows. We've cared about when you brought kids into it, because that is not appropriate for kids. You kept forcing the issue, so we had to make it a law. New Mexico, unfortunately, went backwards in time and is allowing this type of stuff to go into the classroom now because of what has just recently passed in the roundhouse. This was a call for gender-affirming surgeries. Don't care if you're an adult. If you want to do that, I have no problems with that. I have a big problem with messing with kids, because what is wrong with letting the kid be a kid until they get old enough to decide that finally? And why are we making such harsh medical treatments available to kids who can't consent to anything? You know, the age of consent in New Mexico is 16. I think that's too early for anyone to consent. But you know, thinking back, I did a lot of things on my own at 16 that were very adult-oriented. Our kids today don't have that background. I'm having to teach 18-year-olds how to do things that men do. And what I mean by that, don't be a turd. Don't be an idiot. Don't listen to people. Hold the door open. Be someone of character. All these things lead to this very dark scenario of a Red Dawn type situation in the United States. Make no mistake, the left doesn't want you to have a firearm. They've made it known in no uncertain terms now that they want to end the 2A, and that the 2A was never a thing. They don't understand that it's always been a thing. And we're at that point where guys that are wearing blue are going to have to make some hard decisions. Are they going to back their oath? Because that's how we spark off this type of thing that I want to avoid. People talk about a national divorce. I don't have a problem with that either, to be honest, if we can go down to the county level. Because I don't want San Juan County to be part of New Mexico if they split off to be a total blue state. And I know that there's huge swaths of New Mexicans that feel the same way I do. We're all getting tired of Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Las Cruces making the decisions for the entire state. Because it's not necessary and it's not right. We think differently. And the entire country's in this same boat that we're seeing in New Mexico. You have leftists, and I call them leftist communists, that believe that they're right 110% and that nothing you say, because it's outside of the party logic, is correct. We have cultists on the right also who don't believe that if you speak outside, if you can think for yourself, you're an enemy to them too. So we're getting it from both sides if you can think critically. And this is where we're at today. And if you are going to have to do something like Red Dawn, you have to start thinking about the physicalities of this. And if you're going down that dark path, thinking about that dark path. And are we there yet? My assertion is no, we're not. And while pundits on several podcasts keep talking about civil war, I don't think that'll ever happen, to be honest, because I think the federal government would smash it before it ever rose. Now, that's good and bad. That's keeping the peace. But that's also the same type of mentality of, I don't want you to have it, I'll take it from you. And that's where the government is getting deadly serious, and it's scary. Because if you look at the federal level, they're pushing just as hard as they were at the state level for gun bans, for semi-automatic modern sporting rifle bans. Why is it that the tool that every American shooter probably owns is now an enemy of the state? And simply put, that means that they're starting to see you as the enemy. So how do we stop that? This is an honest question, because when I look at this, I don't see very many ways other than to keep trying to inform people, but it doesn't work if they're not willing to listen or change their mind. They're so brainwashed, and I say they, the cultists on either side, that they don't care about facts. They don't care about trying to debate. They don't care about having honest conversations. That makes me worry about this type of scenario. Because if it does happen like this, we're going to be fighting our own people. And that's something that a lot of people aren't ready for. But after the COVID stuff, I sadly had to open my eyes to this being a possibility. I hope we never get this way, and I never advocate for us doing anything so violent and brutal. For now, the battle I see it is people like me, people like you, people that keep showing up and reading the crap, the information that we have to. Politics never should have got into the 2A. Unfortunately, it has, and it'll never leave. So how do we keep from a Red Dawn situation? And at the same time, how do you prepare for something like that just in case? Because sometimes it rains. Sometimes it snows. Sometimes riots get out of hand. Specifically, if you look at the Ferguson riots, the law enforcement agents were told to stand back. They weren't answering service calls. That means if you were having somebody invading your home, you were on your own. Can you fight that battle? I can. I don't want to. I pray to God I never have to use one of these weapons in anger. But I damn sure will. And with that, how much range time did you get this weekend? I took my 22 out, got some plinking done, got to see a really tight group from it that I was surprised actually happened. I took my AR out because, well, it's America's rifle, and I just got some ammunition in it, that I've been waiting for. And I wanted to make sure I was still up to snuff. So I ran through a couple of training drills. Yes, my puckish little ass still does training drills. I took my MP5, my AP5 that is, to the range also to try out some new mags. I didn't spend a lot of time there, and I didn't spend a lot of ammunition either. But I maximized the amount of time and ammunition I had training on multiple targets and engaging multiple targets. And, yes, my fat butt ran. One of my drills that I like to try is I run 70 meters and see how out of wind and out of breath I am to engage targets. I've yet to do it where I'm 100% effective. Change your training routine, and you'll see where your glaring mistakes are and where you need improvement. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. I hope you got some range time. Senate Bill 171 in New Mexico, which was the parent or the companion to House Bill 101, was tabled. Our governor's threatening a special session specifically focused on guns. So be ready, because she's going to throw a tantrum that she didn't get what she expected done because there's too much business to go on. This is where we fight. Like I said, in the roundhouse in New Mexico and at the Senate and the congressional level, at the national level, how you win is you drag this out as long as you can, because they have to keep hearing it, have to keep seeing it. And the more protests, the more drag you cause on this, the other things that are more important to the cultist get pushed to the wayside. And that is unacceptable to them. That's why they'll table bills like this, like Senate Bill 171. And they'll continue with the business of trying to screw us in other ways. Like, share, subscribe, be great.